Hey, everybody. Welcome to tonight's late night happy hour, the first late night happy hour of 2021. And we got like a kick ass logo. Look at that.
Yes, we do.
We can't totally figure out how to use it right and make it look like dissolves and shit, but like look at it. Look at
I know. It's awesome. We want to thank Lalo Guzman. You can find him on IG, Lalo_Guzman_55. Also on Twitter, Lalito Yeah. Also our buddy Jorge Briones. You guys know him as a board op and a producer, various shows at 710 ESPN. You can follow him on Twitter at JABCAMLA. Jorge always looking out for us, man. We always appreciate it. We are going to start introducing and fiddling around with these different graphics and stuff, trying to make the show a little more visually
appealing. We're gonna give it some zazz, Andy.
We are,
zazz.
But we're stoked, man. It was very, very cool of Jorge Lalo. They did this unsolicited. We did not ask. It's just, that's awesome, man. Yes, we really appreciate that.
Tonight, fun show coming up tonight. Had a great conversation earlier today with Lang Whitaker, NBA vet, and a lot. You know, if you've been around the NBA and you're an NBA fan, you know Lang Whitaker. He was with one of the founding guys at Slam. He was with NBA.com and also has written a lot of NBA content for GQ. Now he's the GM and coach of Grizz Gaming. Writes a lot of their media content as well with the Grizzlies. So with the Lakers in Memphis for the second game of that sort of series now that the NBA is playing, we took the time to talk to Lang. Super awesome guy. And that'll be coming up in a second. But before we get there, Andy, the Rams are in the playoffs. Now, I will say this before we get too deep into this conversation. They finished 10-6. Many people know I was Rams skeptical before the season started. I wasn't sure if they would make the playoffs. Granted, there's an extra playoff spot, but they didn't need it. They're the 6th seed, not the 7.
They legitimately made the playoffs, Brian.
They are in. So I underestimated the Rams. Okay. Then now, so they're 10-6. They got in by beating the Arizona Cardinals 18-7 over the weekekend, and
Kyler Murray-less.
Something called Chris Steveler, or Streveler, or
I was going to say that's not actually his name.
Streveler, I believe it's Streveler. There are at least 17 people on the Arizona Cardinals who don't know what his name is either. I'm not taking any flack for that. As Rich Hammond, our friend at The Athletic, and Rams writer and editor over The Athletic, said this is the best preseason game he's seen all year. Him and John Wolford. So the Rams will play in Seattle on Saturday. We don't know if Jared Goff is going to be able to play with his injured, surgically repaired thumb. We don't know if that means John Wolford will play, and I'm not entirely sure which one is better. Like, right? I mean, I think I know. What do you think? Let's start there. What do you think Rams fans want?
Oh, Rams fans, I guarantee want John Wolford. I can promise you. You know what? Let's put this out as a poll.
All right.
At Cam Brothers tonight, who would you rather see start? I am willing to bet right now the winner is going to be John Wolford by a pretty sizable margin. Obviously, if people want to chime in,
all right, I'll put that out. What did you think of Wolford's play? Because I want to ask you first, because you have been much higher on Goff, Goff than me.
Over the last couple of weeks, I've been texting you. I'm starting to come around to your.
Yeah, I know. I was wrong about the playoffs, but I might have been right about the quarterback. But go on.
Here's how I would evaluate John Wolford. He is way more fun to watch than Jared Goff. Like, if you're looking for just a more, just a good time while you're watching a game, regardless of what's going to happen, you want John Wolford.
You make it sound like he's like you picked up your quarterback on the bathroom wall, like for a good time. Call John.
Look, I mean, let's be honest. That is kind of the equivalent. The guy had literally not thrown an NFL pass until week 17 against the Kyler Murray-less Arizona Cardinals. He had not.
I'm putting Blake Bortles on there.
He had not stepped onto a field during an NFL regular season game. So to some degree, it is a little bit like, picking up your quarterback off the street and hoping
but like
for the best.
but I just mean literally for the good time part. Like that, before I finish this
No,
poll,
that's exactly how I mean it too. For a good time call,
right?
555, Wolfer. Like, I mean, that is kind of what I'm talking about. And
They
that
do
works,
have,
by the
they
way.
did, they did get Bortles off.
WOLFORD.
Yeah, they did get Bortles off the practice squad, right? Like that.
Yes,
that happened. All right, so
yes,
I'm including him in the poll.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mean it that way. Like, it's a little bit, times are a little desperate. You're feeling a little frisky. You go to the street, you find your quarterback. So it is a little bit for a good time. It is usable. Like, that thumb is not just going to get in the way of him actually making throws. Would I rather bet on the quarterback with actual NFL experience versus the guy who would be making his second start after a team has a week to prepare for him? Mm-hmm. I got to be honest. I would rather have Goff out there if I'm playing the odds. I'm not sure Goff's going to end up with a good result, but if you're asking me what is realistically the better way of playing the odds, it's Jared Goff.
Yeah. And look, I am I'm not a believer in Goff. I don't think he's terrible. And I actually think in some ways this game reminds you, like, for all these people out there that are, that are like me and think the Rams that are not confident in Goff, that don't believe that, don't feel good when you have a fourth quarter. Like, let's say on Saturday, the Rams are down by 4. There's 4 minutes left on the clock and they have the ball on their own, 23-yard line. Do I believe do I have confidence that Goff can drive them down the field and get them the touchdown they need? I do not. I don't think he's that kind of guy, particularly if they're in a situation where, things aren't perfect and Cam Akers is struggling to run the ball because maybe the ankle's bad and, the passing, whatever, the protection may not be, whatever it might be. I don't really believe that Goff is an elevator of the guys around him. That said, like, the offense was not exactly prolific under Wolford over the weekend, and Goff is better than Wolford.
Like, better. 9 of their points came from the defense.
Yes.
They had a pick 6 and a safety. Like, let's be honest about this. If Kyler Murray plays even half of that game, the Rams likely lose.
They might. They certainly
if he plays the whole game, I'm willing to bet the farm Arizona wins that game.
What's interesting about it too is, like, obviously you don't know like what they have to do, how they do things differently, and blah 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 blah. I mean, all that stuff is true, fine, but I think it's one of the things that about the Rams this year that is hard to figure out. Like, I mean, so I was like, really basic stats: 22nd in yards this year, total yards, which is not impressive considering how much they had the ball. 22nd in points per game, 25th in the number of drives that they had with a score. The offense was not prolific. That said, they were also not asked to put a lot of points on the board, in part because the defense was so dominant. First in total yards, first in scoring defense, first in yards per play. A few of these stats by a mile, like, statistically speaking.
Their defense, I did not. I will say this as somebody who was much more bullish on the Rams than you were. Mm-hmm. I did not see this defense coming at all.
No, I thought it'd be the other way around. The offense would carry him. The defense would be like, I don't know.
Their defense is so damn good. Like, if the Rams are able to make a legitimate playoff run, it could very well be like what we saw from the Ravens. Like that year when Trent Dilfer was the quarterback and they ended up winning the Super Bowl. I'm not saying the Rams are going to win the Super Bowl, but I'm just saying it's going to be like one of those defense first by a mile type teams.
Yeah. I mean, if Jared Goff is capable of playing over the weekend, he's going to play, correct? Like, I know Sean McVay was coy about it. After the game, all that stuff. But that's just because A, he doesn't know if Goff can play, and B, might as well let Seattle think about and have to prepare for both guys. Jared Goff, if he can hold a football and take a snap, is going to play and should.
Yeah. Okay. Now this is interesting though. From LA Rams FC. Did you guys notice defense gave up on Goff? The way they rallied with Wolford and all shows. This is an interesting bit of kind of armchair psychiatry that I'm not even saying LA Rams FC is wrong, but it's easy to read into the excitement that you could see with those guys with Wolford, because some of that comes from just having no idea what's going to happen, and even those guys possibly being pleasantly surprised. You know what I mean? Or like getting a kick out of watching this little...
to quote an old president, there is the soft bigotry of low expectations
Right.
going on in this game.
Or, the rallying effect of watching a quarterback. You and I have been in the Rams locker room multiple times. Whatever Wolford is listed height-wise, they're exaggerating by at least 4 inches.
He's like 3.5 feet tall.
Yeah, the guy is
next to the guy. He's 3.5 feet tall.
Yeah, I mean, he's a little dude.
And he has a peg leg.
No, he does not have a peg leg. He just is short, but they're his actual legs. But that is,
he says.
I don't know how he became a pirate. gotta be honest.
Because I gave him a peg leg.
But that's actually what's exciting. For these guys, like it's fun for them and it's energizing for them to watch a guy that, let's be honest, they don't even know what he's capable of doing during a game, find some degree of success. But like you said, Brian, he was hardly prolific out there. He was hardly carving up Arizona.
Right. What happens when Devontae Kaycock or whichever Antetokounmpo brother we have does something cool in a Laker game? The bench goes crazy. When Jared Dudley hits a three-pointer, the bench goes nuts. Starters rally around backups. That's what happens in all sports. When the guy at the end of the bench, the 25th guy on a baseball roster, hits a pinch hit home run, it's more exciting for the guys on the bench because they're all, they like these guys, and they know they don't get many chances to succeed. And so they get really excited. And look, I don't mean this to say that Wolford didn't do a good job. It's his first NFL start. The pressure was high. The Rams went into that game thinking they might have to win. They didn't know the Packers were going to beat the Bears. The first pass is an interception. Like, that's not good. And he apparently goes to the sidelines, tells everybody, "Don't worry, I'm fine. It'll be okay. You don't." And so after that, they were smart. They got him going with running the ball, all of that stuff, and started taking advantage of his strengths. That said, they can obviously beat Seattle. They've beaten Seattle already this season. They played Seattle well. It's a different Seattle team, though, than the one that they beat earlier in the year. By the way, we'll talk a lot about this with Ted Wynn on Friday, who's going to be joining us from The Athletic. We've had him on the show before. He's fantastic. They're 4.5-point underdogs. That seems about right to me. I don't trust them. Seattle's defense has been so good. I just don't trust them to move the ball.
Here's what's actually really interesting is Seattle, their offense has struggled against the Rams too. Russell Wilson threw for under 250 yards in both games, and the one where he hit 248, I believe he took 37 throws. So it's not like he's actually been carving up the Rams either. Like they averaged 18 points in 2 games against the Rams this year. So they're going to have their own struggles as well.
And I saw our Jordan Rodriguez, our friend from The Athletic, favorite of the show. I apologize to her if I butcher this stat, but she basically put out in the 4 games this year where Jalen Ramsey was matched up against DK Metcalf and DeAndre Hopkins, he gave up a total of 77 yards. So much of what Seattle did early in the season, again, I'm just basically reciting things that Jordan wrote in her column. So much of what Seattle was doing early in the season was built on big plays with DK Metcalf. You take that away, they have some of the similar problems to the Rams. They don't always run the ball particularly effectively. The Rams went from having too many running backs to not enough running backs, not enough healthy ones at least. And so, they can obviously win this game. I wonder if on Seattle's, whoever hosts the late night happy hour in Seattle, I wonder if they're as nervous about this as like Rams fans are about going up there. How good do you think they feel?
I would think that they feel better just knowing their team is healthier at this point. I think at least there are fewer questions. Like, we still don't know exactly what's going. I don't think, at least with Cooper Kupp, Don't know exactly what's
they
going.
should be able to play. Assuming they don't show symptoms between now and Saturday, they should be able to play.
We don't know exactly what's going on with Cooper Kupp. We don't know exactly what's going on with Michael Brockers, who's a really underrated part of that defense.
They supposedly all of them should be available.
Right, but until you know, it's something that you have to factor in with question marks, and Seattle isn't dealing with that right now.
Great response to the poll from LA boxing fan Kurt Warner. Poll question: who do you want under center on Saturday for the Rams? And the right now it's surprisingly close. Kudos to Blake Bortles for really showing well here. Third at 29%, but John Wolford 33%, Jared Goff 38%, 1% for Kurt Warner.
Well, here's what I would say. Like, on one hand, you can tell that this is the playoffs because the majority of people responding in this, in terms of one guy leading, they're being serious about it and recognize, like, okay, all joking aside, the answer is Jared Goff. The fact, however, that Jared Goff is not running away with this speaks to why we have the poll.
Because people are they're joking around, but they're also very serious at this time of year. Like, guys, stop fucking around. It's Jared Goff. Like, we don't have time for your nonsense. All right, so obviously we'll do some more playoff talk over the course of the week. We'll get you ready on Friday for Saturday's game with Ted Wynn of The Athletic. I'm sure the NFL will come up in between now and then. We got a really good and fun slate of guests this week, including Bill Hanstock from, as you guys know him on Sundown Motel. We're going to do a little wrestling. Never done WWE.
No, we haven't.
And so we're going to have Bill on Wednesday. It should be a ton of fun. But let's get to our conversation with Lang Whitaker. He is, again, NBA vet. You know him from Slam, NBA.com, GQ, and now he's in Memphis, coach and GM of Grizz Gaming, but also does a lot of their NBA content, does their NBA media content, and is just a great writer and a great guy. So I had a chance to talk to him earlier in the day, and I'm going to do the thing where I share the screen. And let's see here, Chrome tab, share audio. Oops, sorry. We took a break. There we go. Hey, Lang, thanks for coming on. It's good to see you. We've been looking mostly at your pictures of food over the course of the quarantine, but not. We'll do that again. Hold on one second. All right.
Have a lot to talk about.
Mostly your pictures of food over the course of the quarantine, but not you actually. So it's nice to see your smiling face.
Well, I know what my audience is there for. They not come for pictures of me. When I used to do it, when I worked at NBA.com, and I did the podcast with Rick Fox and Sekou, and whenever we were putting out photos, I was like, Rick, I think your face should be like toward the front of these pictures. It's like this. I know what the moneymaker is. Let's keep you in the front. So
I remember one time Brian and I did a radio show with Rick Fox for 710 ESPN, and he said that he was willing to become the third Kamenetzky. We're like, no, you're not. No, you're not. That's a really terrible idea, Rick. On a bunch of different levels, you are bringing yourself down, including, frankly, the looks department.
He is like really genuinely paralyzingly handsome.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Like when we did the podcast, I didn't know him, and they kind of threw us all together, and we became really good friends from it. And then he came. I was living in New York at the time, and he came to New York and called me, and he's like, "Let's grab lunch." And my wife was like, "I want to come along. I've heard you guys talking for years now, and I've never actually met him." So she came to lunch, and we had lunch and had a great time. And afterwards, we get in the taxi to go home, and she goes, two things. First of all, I can see why you guys are such good friends. You have similar sense of humor. You have a lot to talk about. Number two, that's the most beautiful man I've ever seen.
I think that's true. Like, I mean, look, Andy and I've been in LA for a long time. I've been around famous people. We've been on movie sets. We've done all kinds. I've seen some really handsome people.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever met anybody who's better looking than Rick Fox.
Well, the good thing about this is Rick will completely tweet this out if he can fit it in between his Peloton Instagram stories that he's been all over the last couple of weeks. But
no, he's not like, arrogant about it or anything.
No,
like
not
that.
at all.
But I think Rick at this point has realized, you know what, the general consensus, I'm not bad looking.
Yeah.
Like everyone.
And actually, you know what's irritating about that too is like he actually has the kind of lifestyle where he could do the Peloton commercial where you set it up in front of your all glass wall overlooking your Japanese garden and you just get after it for a half hour, 40 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know what his thing is. He said he posted something the other day on Instagram, and I sent him a note, and I was like, "Has this become a Peloton account now? Like, what's going on with this thing?" So he's apparently really into it.
By the way, do you agree? I have a theory that because I am not a believer in the motivational speaker industry. I think by and large it's a scam. I'm not saying you could never get anything out of it, but I think it is the vocalized version of a pyramid scam.
Okay.
I consider motivational speakers, they're basically Peloton instructors, just not as hot. Like if they were hotter, they would end up Peloton instructors or like online.
No, there are actually a lot of motivational speakers are.
Tony Robbins is the handsome man, so I don't
know. He's got like a 7-foot head. No.
Yeah, I watched Shallow Hal last night for a little bit on cable, so I saw. I'm oddly familiar with Tony Robbins at the moment.
That is a movie that, if made in 2021, would be made much differently.
Yeah, totally.
By much differently, I mean not at all.
Not at all. And it's wild to think that like the Farrelly brothers did that, and then one of the Farrellys got the Oscar for Best Picture.
I know.
Like 3 years ago, whenever that was.
Green Book.
Yeah.
That's.
I think we're already way off the.
That's how this show goes. I wouldn't worry about it. It's going to happen again.
Yeah.
A lot of attention on after Sunday's game. Lakers win the first of these sort of little mini series that are being played now. 108 with 94. A lot of attention, obviously, on Marc Gasol. He was. Obviously, he always is really good with the media. Talked a lot about the connection to Memphis and this, visiting his home and changing the smoke detector batteries and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, the city, him, all of that. What does having Marc Gasol on your team mean to your team?
I think there's a couple of ways to unpack it. What he means to your team is. He's a hell of a leader. He cares. Everything matters to him. You see the way he's fit in so seamlessly to the Lakers already. I saw it was like 2 games and people were putting out highlight videos of him throwing bounce passes and stuff. He's such a good fit basketball wise to kind of like any system. He can figure out where he fits in and what he's supposed to do. And you're seeing that already in LA. Like I think it's really cool to watch him and LeBron play together and to see them play. What he means kind of bigger picture to franchise. He understands what it means to represent a city, to represent a franchise. He's always willing to talk to the media, to do all that kind of stuff. Here in Memphis, he went to high school here in Memphis because Powell was on the Grizzlies. So people here in Memphis have watched him since he was, you always see that famous picture of him when he was like a chubby high school player. Like people here remember him as that. And he goes to the grocery stores here and has a farm somewhere outside the city where he grows his own vegetables that he eats and all that stuff. So he's a big part of the city and like the fabric of the city. And I imagine one day after everything's through, he moves back here one day and he gets back involved here. But he really is a Memphian. I got hired. This is my 4th season here, and when I got hired, like the first week I was here, I hadn't really gotten the chance to meet people or get around. And my wife is Cuban, so my son speaks Spanish, and we were working with him on speaking Spanish and trying to get him better at it. And like the first game we go in the employee entrance, and Marc was like 60 yards ahead of us. And I pointed him out to my son, who was 5 at the time. And I was like, look, there's Mr. Marc. And, he also speaks Spanish. And Marc heard me, turns around, walks all the way back, and is like, hola, ¿cómo estás? And my son's like, hola. And they have a little conversation in Spanish for like 5 minutes. And they introduce each other and shake hands and turn around, and Marc leaves. And I was like, man, like he doesn't know me. He doesn't know my family. He doesn't know anything. And that's just the kind of guy he is. I thought that was such a cool example of Marc and kind of what he's like as a person. And I just love that he's so genuine. And he got a ring out of this whole thing now, and he might get another one. We'll see how he goes this year.
Well, I mean, it also speaks to just the Gasol family. I mean, because we covered Powell for years. He's exactly like that. And obviously their careers with the Grizzlies were different. The franchise itself was in very different places when Powell was there versus when Marc was there. But it's got to be, I think, pretty cool just that the Grizzlies as a franchise has this history with these 2 Hall of Fame brothers. And that's really unique to this one franchise.
It's weird. There's like this connection from Barcelona to Memphis, like to different continents, different countries, different places. And there's this really clear connection between these 2 cities, thanks to this family. And, it's cool to see that they're still around too, like this is the 20-year anniversary of the Grizzlies in Memphis. And, the fact that like Powell is still kind of on the fringes, and maybe he's coming back, maybe not, whatever. And then Marc's still playing, and it still looks great. It's cool to see them still around and still part of everything.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say what. It was people that surprised people that he had. He missed the game. There was no game last year, I guess, between Toronto and Memphis. In Memphis, it got scrapped by the pandemic, and obviously no fans yesterday. What would that have been like? Because I guess next year there's probably 2-year contract he's on with the Lakers, but there's possibility he's back, but you don't know.
Well, we got to see Conley came back last year early in the season, so that was both of them were going to have their return games last year, and that was the first time to have one of those guys back because the core 4 is those 2 guys, Tony Allen, Zach Randolph, and Zebo and Tony were still active. Going into last season. So neither one of those guys really had their final after their retired game, that kind of thing. Zach had his return game here. Tony is always kind of been around and still hanging around. But Mike last year had his big return game and got the video and all that stuff and the full crowd and everybody went crazy. And Marc's kind of the one that's left now. We haven't had a chance for the 16,000 fans to stand up and celebrate him the way that it's going to happen eventually. I think that's the thing we were talking about on the pregame show last night. You just kind of trust that at some point it's going to happen. There was a video last night, and there's some player family and friends that were in the arena last night. Not a ton of people, but a couple people, and they stood and clapped and stuff. And Marc kind of
I thought that was really strange. I get why they did it, but it's. Who are you playing that for? You're really just playing it for Marc, I guess.
Yeah, for Marc. And you can see Marc and the Lakers players all watching it, and the Grizzlies players. I think at this point, a lot of those guys, there's so many young guys on our team. I think we're the 2nd youngest team in the NBA, and most of them don't really have a lot of memory of that. So for them to see that and to see all that too. But it was really cool. The video's on Twitter. If people haven't seen it, go watch it. It's really good.
I was going to say, in some ways, I think you're also playing it for the viral audience. Because if they're tuning in for this game, they're going to be curious what you do for Marc, and they see that video, and it was really well done. I thought it was great how much they focused on Marc actually as a person, in addition to who he was as a player. In the meantime, though, unfortunately, Ja Morant is hurt, and he's the franchise face in the making, or theoretically in the making, depending on how things go. You know, we've seen a lot of great stuff from him on the court as a rookie last season. In terms, though, like of who he is as a person, the personality, and what you would look for as a franchise face, what do you see in him now, and what are the things that you look for in terms of him just evolving into that role?
Couple of things. I think, last year for Ja, it was tough because when you're a rookie point guard, it's tough to come into a team and kind of be the guy to take over, and Jaren was already here. And when Ja got here, he had to kind of find his place and kind of figure out that leadership role. And he found it, clearly by the end of the season that Ja had kind of slipped into that role. And I think heading into this season, we were starting to see him, he played a week of games before he got hurt, but he looked a lot better than he was a year ago. He could finish in the paint a lot better, was more confident inside, was more confident with that jump shot. He just looked like a better player than he was a year ago, and last year was the rookie of the year. So, he was clearly making those steps and getting better. I think with Ja, he talks about it a lot. Like he's been overlooked his entire career, from high school going into college, then when playing at Murray State, and they say, oh, that's not a big school. He's just beating up on smaller schools and stuff. He kind of feels like he's been overlooked his whole life. And I last year's Slam put him on the cover, and they called me to write the story, which was cool because it was kind of go home again week. So, but I talked to Ja about it, and I was like, hey, maybe this is the first time in your career that you've kind of been rated right. You've been underrated your entire life. And now all of a sudden, by the end of last season, everybody realized, okay, this guy is clearly the best rookie in this class. And, I think he started kind of finally getting his just due. But to his credit, I don't think it's enough. He talks all the time, about finding slights here and there, kind of like Damian Lillard. There's always finding some way to get motivation off something. I think Ja's similar in that way. Yeah. He's always finding motivation and always finding a way to kind of get fired up. And the other thing with Ja, it's just from a standpoint of franchise fit, it's really a perfect fit for him in Memphis. This is a kid from South Carolina who went to college in Kentucky. He's a Southern guy. He's from the South. He has the accent, all that stuff. And he grew up in the country. His dad would set up a grill in the backyard, and on the weekends would grill food, and all his friends would come play pickup basketball. And this is a Southern kid, and he's in a Southern city where basketball is the thing. In Memphis, historically, basketball's been the big thing here. So it's a really good fit, just culture wise, city wise, franchise wise, all that stuff. It really couldn't have been a better fit, I think, for how it all played out.
It's funny. Just a side note, I am 1000% convinced that Neil Olshey used to pay off members, coaches and media, to not put Damian Lillard in the All-Star game just so he could go nuclear in the second half of every year.
Yeah, it works.
Every year it works. It was like clockwork. But this is what I think is fascinating about him. It's interesting that you talk about his personality and kind of being made to be in that market in Memphis. There's an enormous pressure that comes with being a Lakers star. You have the eyes of but sure. If you're drafted by the Lakers at some point, you in the back of your head can go, you know what? I can be pretty good and not great, because eventually they're going to be able to find that guy and bring him in. Memphis is different. And you guys have, been very competitive over time and put together some really good teams, but it's not a traditional big free agent destination. Right. And somebody like Ja Morant, if the Grizzlies are going to be a conference champion type team, it's going to be someone like him leading it. Yeah. So it's a different kind of pressure. How aware do you think he is of that kind of thing? Him, you could say the same about Jaren, I would suspect. He's also an outstanding player. Yeah,
Jaren's, the crazy thing is Jaren's younger than Ja. This team is.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like I said earlier, this team is so young. It's just a really young team. And last year there, at least at the beginning of the year, you had Jay Crowder and Solomon Hill, kind of the old veteran guys. And now, Kyle Anderson is considered the old head, and Kyle was laughing about it. He's like, I'm the veteran guy. I'm the old guy on this team.
Isn't he 27?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think he's 30 for sure. Kyle's younger, and Gorgie Jang, I think is 31. Like Gorgie's the oldest guy. Him and Jonas are like the old grizzled veteran type. So, you know, I kind of feel like these guys are all too young to realize the pressure or anything like that. And also, like, you know, they came into a situation where the franchise was clearly rebuilding, new coach, new GM, everything's changing. So I think last year nobody expected this team to be in the 8th spot heading into the bubble. You know, like everyone thought, oh, this is a multi-year process. It's going to take a while. You know, the Grizzlies are going to trade away Mike Conley, Gasol, rebuild, get assets, all that stuff. But it happened really quick. And, you know, all these pieces have gotten in here really fast. And, you know, Brandon Clark, another really great young player.
I was going to say they did terrific with him. That was a great pickup late in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, and you saw last night, Desmond Bane looks really good for a low first round guy. He's been able to come in and just shoot right away, you know, fill in that need. So it's still just such a young team, and it's going to take some time for all that to fill in and get the pieces here. But yeah, I think those guys they're almost too young to recognize the pressure of it. They just go play and have fun, and they genuinely get along. Like, you know, I haven't been able to go in the locker room this year, but previous years you go in there and, you know, you see them all hanging out, talking. You see it on Twitter. Like they play around, joke with each other. Like this is a group of guys who really get along, and feels like, you know, the term that Rich Kleiman, the GM, keeps using, Zach Kleiman, I'm sorry, Rich is KD's name. The term that Zach keeps using is
we make that joke about Rich Paul here all the time.
The term he keeps using is sustainable success. Like that's what they want to kind of create here, sustainable success. And I think, you know, if Ja's the building point, that's a pretty good thing to build on.
When does Jaren get his own zoo animal? Because
that's a great question.
This was probably the most delightful moment of 2020.
Oh my God. I couldn't get enough of this story.
Yeah, so the Memphis Zoo had a baby giraffe born, and they named him Ja Raffe. And then one day Ja shows up to go visit Ja Raffe. I don't know if I retweeted it this weekend. Somebody went to the zoo and took a photo of Ja Raffe that was hanging out and tagged Ja in the tweet and was like, "Hey, look, here's Ja," and Ja Morant retweeted it and was like, "My youngin' out there chilling."
I just love giraffes. Like I love
giraffes.
I like animals where you can clearly see like the evolutionary like path here. Like, oh, more food at the top of the trees, longer necked animals get there and eat the food. Like that is very cut and dry. Like,
it sort of looks like a horse designed by committee, right? Like, I mean, it looks like something went wrong at one point. I went to Kenya a decade ago, and we saw these giraffes all over the place. Like, you'd just be going down this, you know, we were in a nature preserve, you'd be driving along, and all of a sudden you turn the corner, and they just look so weird because, like, the lower body looks, you know, horsish, equine. I don't know the word used. The lower body looks like a horse, and then there's this neck that, like, stretches up to the top of the trees, and when you drive around the corner, they look at you like,
have you ever seen the videos of giraffes fighting?
Oh, no.
Whap each other with their necks?
Oh,
it's insane.
You don't want to mess with the giraffe, man.
I would imagine they could get a lot of torque going with that neck.
Oh,
you know, like,
so like if I got to tell you, man, and obviously these guys, you know, they've been someone like Ja Morant, they've been in this world for a long time, and they have to divorce sentimentality to some degree just because you have to navigate a career and it's a business, and these teams often do that to you. But I know that if I were with a franchise in a city that named a giraffe after me, I would never ask out. Like, you would have me for life. Like I would be signing a lifetime contract. Your team could be 50 games below 500, and I would feel too bad to abandon the giraffe.
Yeah, I think look, people here love Ja, and Ja loves the city. They just put a mural of him on the side of this pizza place that opened. Panini is announced this like new partnership with Ja, and they put this like 30-foot tall mural of Ja on the side of this building, a couple miles from FedEx Forum here. So look, he's barely been here a year, you know, like, and all this stuff's happened in the last year. You know, it's clearly a very warm marriage at this point.
I think you guys may have planted the giraffe. Like, you know, you need small market teams. You got to do the little stuff. You don't have the big things. Like, let's get a giraffe.
You'll know that's the case if the Panini mural gets updated and they add the giraffe in there. Like that's when you realize, okay, the giraffe is in on it.
Yeah,
he's a part of the whole
the
thing.
giraffe
paid
can
off the
paint the
giraffe.
top parts, like the put a brush in its mouth and let it do the top.
So here's what it looks like when giraffes fight. Oh, wait, whoa. Ah,
Man,
That's the whole fight.
oh, they're pretty chill. Ah,
Is this the same? Is another angle or the same?
same giraffes, presumably.
you know, it's very Matrixy.
Yeah,
Like,
it
you
is.
know, when Neo dodges the bullets and leans back, there's an element of that to it.
These are like 3-punch fights. They're all like
It's heavyweight stuff. I mean, you
I
can't.
guess.
But that's what they do. They bash each other with their necks.
And then in the neck, they like use the neck to hit the neck. So
It's very meta.
You are the coach and GM of Grizz Gaming.
I am.
How did that actually come about? Like, what was your experience, if any, in the world of gaming? That's interesting, given what we know about your background.
So, you know, the quick background is I was at Slam forever, and then spent a couple of years like doing stuff for GQ, a couple of years at the NBA.com. I'm from Atlanta originally. My wife's from Atlanta also. Our families are in the South. We'd been in New York for 16 years or something. We were kind of ready to get out of New York and figure something out. And my deal was up with Turner, who runs NBA.com, and my wife was like, "You should just tweet it that you're a free agent because you have a lot of followers. See what happens." And I tweeted it, and like a day later, the Grizzlies called and were like, "Hey, let's talk," because they were kind of starting up this Grind City Media. I've always played video games my whole life. I've written reviews of video games for Slam, New York Times, GQ. I'd reviewed mostly sports games, and then when I was at NBA.com, all things lead back to Rick Fox. Rick was starting Echo Fox, which was his like esports thing, and so I kind of watched him do that, you know, and from afar, and was watching him build this thing. And the first year they were losing all their matches, and I was calling them the Lakers of esports and all this stuff just to mess with Rick. And finally though they got good.
You forget our audience, Lang.
Oh, no. This was a year when the Lakers weren't good. This is like but then Rick finally they started getting good, and they were winning games and winning championships and stuff. And so when the Grizzlies called me, and you know, this 2K league, the NBA was starting a 2K league. The game NBA 2K is the most popular basketball game, one of the most popular sports games in the world, sells like 10 million copies a year. So the NBA partnered with the company that makes 2K to start this league based around the game. When the league launched, 17 of the NBA teams had a team in the 2K league. And the Grizzlies were like, "Would you want to come run our team?" And I called Rick, and I was like, "Do you think I could do this?" And he was like, "Look, you understand the basketball part of it. The esports part of it, you know, you can learn that." He's like, "The whole esports just in general is like 5 years old. Nobody understands it. You can figure that part out." But he goes, "You'd be great at it." So that gave me kind of the confidence to go back to them and do it. And so we're heading into year 4 of Grizz Gaming now.
What do the duties of both coaching and GMing consist of?
Everything. So, you know, coaching, when we have games, I'm on the headsets with the guys and looking for plays we can run.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Like, what are you doing?
We have offenses, we have defenses, we have rotations, we have sets we use on offense, defense. You know, during the games, I'm like either I'm helping look for like mismatches, things like that. Hey, this play might work here. Keeping track of timeouts, fouls, all that stuff. I mean, basically the same thing coaches do. You know, during the games, the Grizzlies games pre-pandemic, I used to sit right behind Taylor, and I could watch him and like see what he would do. And you know, one of the things he would say a lot to the guys last year, especially, was when the call would go against them or a turnover or whatever, you'd hear him yell, like, keep playing. Just remind the guys, like, don't get in your head about it. Just keep playing. I say that all the time to my guys. Like, things happen, you know, you get a weird animation, something doesn't go your way. And I'm reminding the guys, come on, keep going. Let's forget it. We'll talk about it later. But right now we got to keep playing. So coaching, all that stuff. GM, you know, like we have 2 players on our roster now. We have to draft 4 coming up in the draft in 2021. So I'm scouting guys, looking at players play. I'm booking places for the guys to live, you know, all that stuff. So there was one day like there was one day like a year ago, I found myself like in the loading dock of FedEx Forum stacking like pallets of water on this, moving tray thing, and I was going to have to carry them all up to the Grizz Gaming space. And I was like, man, I bet Zach Kleiman doesn't have to do this, but I'll do it. So it's been amazing watching this.
Well, Zach Kleiman also arranged for the giraffe, so maybe if you raise the game a little bit, you could fix that problem.
Get a giraffe named after one of my players or something.
Exactly, or some animal. Doesn't have to be a giraffe. Forge your own path, Lang. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but
I would definitely get one that fights cooler than a giraffe if I do it.
Okay, no, I got a better one.
Kangaroo, maybe?
No, a better giraffe fighting video.
Oh, okay.
Do you consider yourself a player's coach?
Yes.
Are you old school? Like, how do you operate in terms of
a little bit of both? Actually, I like the one thing I've kind of learned is like every person reacts differently to different types of information and response. So, this guy, you can kind of kick him in the pants and say, hey, you got to play better. And this guy, you got to kind of take another approach to it. We have our point guard, this kid named Vandy, and I think he's 21 years old. And there's times where you have to kind of, pat him on the back and be like, hey, it's going to get better tomorrow. We'll just keep working on it. And then there's days where I have to put on a little bit of a show and throw my hat on the floor and huff and puff and walk out of the room. I mentioned to you guys Ted Lasso earlier. I told somebody I work with here, I was like, I'm stealing all those speeches he gave for next year for Grizz Gaming, like the team speeches he gave the guys.
I don't know, Andy, if you've seen that, but like that, that's probably the only show that I can think of.
I have not seen it.
Like,
it's fantastic.
It's incredible that like I've not heard anybody who doesn't like it. Like nobody.
I mean, to be clear, it's a terrible premise for a show. If you think about it, like it's basically Major League in England, the baseball movie. It's like a woman who's wants to upset her ex-husband, hires a American football coach who knows nothing about soccer to come run this team into the ground. And but Jason Sudeikis just makes the show so watchable. Like
I've heard it's just like the most incredibly optimistic show.
It is
like at a time when everybody really needs optimism.
Yeah, he's fantastic. I didn't watch it until about a month ago because I just thought this seems like a dumb show. Like, I'm not going to watch this. And I finally started watching it, and my wife and I plowed through the whole thing in like 3 days. Like,
they did the same thing. And but like, think of like different popular shows, like, Game of Thrones. I mean, I've even met people who didn't like Breaking Bad or stuff like that. It's like, I have not found anybody who didn't like Ted Lasso. Like that person does not exist.
It's also amazing. Like, like each episode's like 28 minutes. Like, they're not long, so it's easy to get through them. And it's only 10 episodes, I think. And if you're a sport, it's also like there's not a lot of good sports shows on TV that are not reality shows basically. So this one kind of checks all those boxes. It's great. So
yeah, for sure. All
anyway,
right,
I'm stealing all
check
this.
Let's see here this. We go. Look at that.
It's the same fight.
Oh. Get in there. Ooh, got him. There's this guy. Bam!
Oh, I mean, come on, Lang. I mean, that's a solid connection. Torque.
So my son is really into animals, so I have a little bit of knowledge of this sort of just so that I picked up via osmosis from him watching stuff. But I think kangaroos are pretty badass the way they fight. Like they tilt back and they balance. Yeah, but on those claws they have they have really sharp claws, and they can like disembowel each other.
Australia is the most dangerous place. Yeah. I spent a year there in school, and I'm not kidding. Like the 45 seconds into orientation, the messaging is: don't put your hands where you can't see. Don't put your feet where you can't see. Everything is sharp and poisonous. Yeah. If it bites you, you will die. And they like to hide, and whatever it is, likes to hide in your shoe.
Yeah. So I'm going kangaroo. I'm gonna if I have a fighting animal, I'm gonna pick a kangaroo. When I used to work at Slam, I used to all the time do stuff where we would argue about man versus beast. Like if this animal had to compete against a human in like a road race or different things like that, it was a great topic. And then Fox actually made a show called Man versus Beast. That it was terrible, but
you mean Fox? You mean Fox the Network, not handsome man Rick Fox?
Right? No. Yeah, Fox the Network. Fox did this whole show about Man versus Beast, which like a person running against a cheetah and stuff like that.
that doesn't feel fair.
Who won?
Who do you think? Yeah.
As we talked about earlier, you write for Grind City Media, and one of the attractions on Grind City Media is Cooking with Lang. You can discover it over at grindcitymedia.com/cooking with Lang, you can learn different food items such as duck breast.
Yeah.
Right here. I did not know, Lang, until checking out a recent installment that you're supposed to cook duck medium rare.
Oh, yeah.
I would have assumed it's just like chicken or turkey or whatever other poultry that warned over and over.
Yeah,
cook it all the way.
Yeah, those you got to get at 165 to kill like the bacteria. The duck breast is like a red meat basically, and you want it kind of medium rare. Unless you're maybe the president and you want it well done.
I think it's safe to assume if he's not willing to eat a hamburger medium rare, he's going everything well done. Some photos, people who aren't aware of you, follow you on Twitter. You can see all of the hashtag quarantine, hashtag cooking with Lang, your New Year's extravaganza. Here we go.
Some turkey, cornbread. I mean, in the South, there's a superstition. You have to have black-eyed peas, cornbread, and greens. The peas represent coins, the greens represent dollar bills, and the cornbread is gold. So you have to have those three things. If you want to get a little deeper, the greens you're supposed to cook with pork because pigs root forward and chickens, turkeys scratch backwards. And for superstitious purposes for 2021, you want to move forward. So on Christmas Day, I cooked a turkey breast and I had the legs left over. So I bought a couple extra legs and I did a confit thing where you cover them in oil and cook them in the oven all day and pull them out about a couple days later. And they were pretty awesome.
Here, by the way, is a close-up of the greens that Lang was referring to with the pork in there.
Stunning picture.
That is gorgeous, by the way. It's really good looking. When did you first start getting into cooking?
I love that we're talking about this. This is so.
No, are you kidding? Look, we have food people on.
Yeah.
I mean, like when we have Kevin Arnovitz on, we have to force ourselves to actually ask him some basketball questions.
Kevin's far more interested in talking about food than he is.
I know. I went to a Dodgers game with Kevin when the finals were in LA and whenever that was, 07, 08, something like that. And Kevin's from Atlanta originally, as am I, so we're a Braves fan. The Braves happened to be in LA, so we went to the game. And Kevin's like, I was like, "Do you want to just get food there?" And he's like, "No, I'll bring it." He brought sushi to the game, and it was awesome. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Oh God, he hasn't been able to do it as much lately, but when the All-Star game or something like that would happen, Kevin would have a bunch of different media people over to his place for a brunch, and he would make everything. Yeah. And it's always just spectacular. He's really good.
He is. I started. I mean, my mom cooked, my grandmother cooked, but I was never really into it when I was a kid. And then when I moved to New York with my girlfriend at the time, now wife, and neither one of us really cooked. And we were just like ordering out every single night. After like 3 months, you're like, all right, something's got to give here. So I was like, I guess I'm gonna have to take this on. So I just started watching Food Network and PBS cooking shows all the time. The internet was around, so I would Google stuff, how to do, how to debone a chicken, all that stuff. Now on YouTube, you can pretty much find anything you need to know. But between those things, that was kind of how I started learning how to do stuff. And then I kind of had a little bit of a natural, I don't know, attraction to it or whatever. Something in it, to me, I just really enjoyed doing it. I love standing there like dicing an onion, just kind of having quiet time. That's my quiet time at the end of the day, just being in there and turning on some music, get something.
You've got 21-year-old, virtual point guards who aren't listening to you on the floor. You need to decompress somehow.
A little bit, yeah. So that kind of became my way to decompress, and it was just something I did for fun for years. And then after I left Slam, I was GQ's NBA blogger for a couple of years, and then when NBA.com hired me, I couldn't write about the NBA for GQ anymore. So I was talking to my editor there, and he was like, "We'd love to still have you do stuff. What would you want to do?" And I was like, "What about like cooking for guys who don't know how to cook?" They weren't really doing that at the time. No one was writing that stuff for GQ, and so they were like, "All right, so go with it." So I started this thing for that where I would have chefs, like these chefs would come to New York to promote their books. So I would have them come to my apartment and cook something to show like you can have a boat-sized kitchen. And you can still make awesome food in a small kitchen. You don't need this professional fancy thing. So these different chefs came and would cook stuff in my kitchen. I started kind of just writing recipes, but writing them in kind of relatable ways. Like I would say, dice this the size of an Air Max shoestring or that kind of thing. Things that like guys would understand, and try to make it easy. I did that for a couple of years. It was fun. And then when I moved to Memphis, I kind of put all that on hold because I was just so busy getting Grizz Gaming running and everything else. But the day that the quarantine started, whenever that was, March, April, whenever the Go Bear game happened, right after that, that night I cooked dinner and I just put a picture of it on Twitter and I put the hashtag quarantine just to be funny. And my boss, oh, and the guy who runs the Grind City Media Twitter account retweeted it and put hashtag cooking with Lang on it. And our boss called me that night and was like, "Hey, do you think you can do videos, like cooking with Lang videos?"
We
And I was
need
like,
content.
"Yeah." He was like, "We're gonna have content. We need content." And I was like, "I mean, I don't know how to do it. We can't have a camera crew come in my house." So what we ended up doing is my wife films them on my work iPhone, and then I send all the video files to our video team. Sam, one of the guys in our video team, Edwards, does the editing, puts them all together. I record a little voiceover on my iPhone, send it to him, and
So that's how they do it on the Pioneer Woman. It's the same thing.
yeah, me and
I'm
Reed
kidding.
Brummer.
They have like 19 kids and they do all the
Yeah,
filming.
I
I
could,
want to, before we let you go, I want to ask you you mentioned that you were Slam and GQ and all that stuff. Like you have kind of lived in NBA culture.
yeah.
What I realize this is a hard question to answer and it's pretty broad, but like NBA Twitter is, as engaging as I think any sports Twitter subsection of anything. Shoe culture is its own
Right.
thing. Like, there's so much about basketball that is culturally significant and things like it can be really cool. It can be really mean. Where do you think kind of basketball culture is right now, like relative to, where it was 15, 20 years ago, whatever it might be?
It's a good question. Like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when I was at Slam Online, I did a column every day called The Links, and it was basically aggregating content and sending people to links to different stories at the time. And there wasn't even like a comment section when I started the thing. Like I would post the article and then get like 50 emails between then and the next day. And then I could kind of figure out what I wanted to be in the column the next day via the emails. But then eventually, comments came around and then Twitter, all that stuff. Like I think like the more immediate that stuff becomes, kind of the meaner the discourse becomes a little bit.
Right.
And look, we're all guilty of it. Like, I was making fun of James Harden last week. But I think it's pretty easy to kind of just feel like, oh, well, this isn't going to happen. I mean, this isn't going to be seen. I can just say whatever I want. It doesn't matter. But what's interesting is like people read it. Like that was the thing with Slam. Like when you wrote something in Slam, whoever you were writing about, they were going to see it eventually. It was going to get to that guy. And I think on the internet that you see that happening now, you tweet something and then like in the comments, somebody will tag the person. You're like, oh, come on. Like I didn't like, I wasn't trying to be specific to that person. It was more like an idea, I thought. But yeah, I do think it's a little mean.
Like, is it good for basketball? Like the way that, on the one hand, the stuff's out there and, it's, you're more exposure to players and shoes and lifestyle and all this other stuff. But like you say, it can get really mean, like to the point where even I think like there's a backlash that you see on the broadcasts themselves from some of the older broadcasters and stuff who kind of harken back to, back when I was a young lad stuff. But I can't tell if it's good or not.
Well, you guys know, like, first of all, those old guys, I sound like Charles Barkley when I started the sentence with, first of all, you guys know, like any of those guys, like there's like a huge button on their chest that you can push while you bring up, these days, seems like these guys don't have to work as hard as you guys did. Then boom, you get 10 minutes of them ranting about, back in my day, we never had this and that. I mean, look, today you don't have fans screaming at the guys from 6 feet away like they did 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
That's true.
Fans would get ejected if they said some of the stuff that got said a long time ago. Those guys used to fly commercial. They'd have people yell at them in airports, on airplanes, all that kind of stuff. So I think players are a lot more removed from it than they were 20 years ago, that kind of thing. But it's also a little bit more immediate. And if you take it more personally, I guess, if you see these words on a phone screen and it, affects you in some sort of way. But I also think like this whole generation of players that's coming up now, all these younger guys, like they grew up with this, they're sort of native to this, the way the discourse works and the way that the internet works right now. And they're used to seeing things happen really quickly. Like I always see Ja, when you notice him on Twitter, when he tweets, it's always like a 1 hour spurt of tweets of like him responding to things, and then it kind of cuts off for a long time. And he lives pretty far outside of the city, and his drive back and forth. His dad was driving him last year back and forth. And I was wondering, I asked him, I was like, is that during your commute? You just sit there on your phone and you bang out Twitter for like an hour? And he's like, yeah, that's kind of how it works. But I think these guys, they don't live with Twitter 24/7. And, you know, like us, myself, you guys, like we're on there all day looking at news, looking at things, trying to figure out what's happening and, you know, how do we respond to what's going on right now. I think a lot of those guys, it's more like a just kind of come and go, drop in, drop out. And they don't take it as personally, but maybe that's why Steph Curry took it more personally because he's older.
Yeah, I mean, I think putting a button on it, just the guys that you're talking about, like Barkley and that generation. I think you're correct that they dealt with more direct hostility from fans, like in terms of face to face, fewer buffers. But there was also more separation once you left like a couple environments. Whereas these guys may not have to deal with as much direct insults, direct negativity in that type of space, but it's harder to go away from it altogether.
It's really difficult to disconnect.
Because, I mean, like,
it's that meanness that you talked about, Lang, that
all of us are parents. It's similar to what you worry about with our kids all growing up in social media that you sort of never get away from because you're always on some type of a device.
Yeah.
And, asking kids, say are getting bullied over social media, well, just don't go on Facebook, don't go on Twitter, Instagram, or whatever. You're basically saying don't engage in life as we know it. Like this is what it actually is.
The thing that makes it hard also is like some of those tweets just live forever. Like, I mean, now you can mute a specific tweet, but there's things I tweeted a week ago, not bad things, but things I tweeted a week ago that are still getting recycled in my feed, and it's hard to forget about some of that stuff. Like it just keeps coming back and back and back.
I'll occasionally get a tweet like favorited or liked or whatever from like 7 years ago.
Yeah, there's the robot. That's how you know the robots are out there. No question.
Yeah,
You talked about kangaroos. Check out this motherfucker. Look at this guy. I am not messing with that animal. Look at that.
You don't want it with a kangaroo.
Look at that thing. Whoa. He'll kill you.
He's flexing.
He is.
I mean, how tall are those things? Like 8 feet tall, 9 feet tall?
They can be.
That kangaroo looks like he just like took off his shirt and is ready to fight.
They can punch you with their hands or disembowel you with their feet.
Ooh.
Look at that.
Oh.
Do you think a kangaroo could beat up a giraffe?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know.
I do.
Probably.
Kangaroos have more mobility.
I don't know if a giraffe could like get a hit in on a kangaroo.
Yeah.
You think that's what it says? You think that's what it says with on their business card? Like, what was the first part? And disembowel you with their feet, like
punch you with the hands. Yeah,
disembowel is a really underrated word.
It is. Yeah, I don't know if a giraffe could like get a lick in because it feels like the kangaroos. A, they have the mobility. B, by the time they swing the thing around, you'd see it coming. You can just hop out of the way.
That is brutal, it's the classic big lineup versus small lineup argument.
The giraffes would have a definite rebounding advantage, but the kangaroos would probably shoot really well from outside the 3-point line.
I just like they don't look angry, both the giraffe and the kangaroo, before they kill you. Don't they look perfectly sanguine?
Well, a little more upset, but
we'll ask some of the geeks that we know in the analytics world. What does the deep data favor, the kangaroo or the giraffe?
Lang Whitaker is the GM and coach of Grizz Gaming, Grind City Media. You remember him from Slam and NBA.com and GQ, and a chef and a lover of giraffes. Thanks so much. This is fun.
This is a lot of fun. I want to come back and we can do like we should do a whole animal animal husbandry episode. Like which one?
Yeah.
If they fought, who would win?
Yeah, absolutely. That actually would be a great audience engagement episode. So, we'll do that. All right, cool. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. So that's Lang Whitaker. Thanks again to Lang for joining us earlier today. I think giraffe fighting is cooler looking than kangaroo fighting because you know what I don't like about kangaroo fighting? I don't like when they do the thing where they put their heads back and kind of paddle at each other.
This is the way I would describe
It
it.
makes it look less like tough.
I think that a kangaroo is more of an actual fighter, but a giraffe is a more interesting creature to watch fight.
I would agree with
It's
that.
more of a unique fighting style. Like it's more difficult, I think, to scout for a giraffe. Like you're not quite sure what you're doing. Like you get it's the way styles make fights. Like it's going to be really difficult to try to figure out how to defend against a giraffe. But once you figure that out, the giraffe's going to have no counters. Like a kangaroo is going to have way more counters than a giraffe. Hey, Jorge's here with us.
So yeah, we got a couple minutes. We'll get out of here. But the Lakers tomorrow play the second half of that the series now that we're seeing so much of in Memphis. No Ja, we talked about, no Jaren Jackson Jr. Like basically Memphis, the players that make the Grizzlies interesting are all hurt. And you would expect the Lakers to win. We talked a lot. If you missed it, new Land of Lakers podcast, we talked a lot with Tim Crangus McBasketball from bballindex.com about some of the stuff the Lakers have been doing, winning while they're getting the hang of new personnel and new players. Encourage people to go to iTunes and find that one. But
just subscribe.
Yeah.
It'll do the finding for you.
It just appears like magic in your inbox. Subscribe, by the way, to the Late Night Happy Hour podcast as well. Before we go, though, the Warriors beat the Kings tonight 137-106. Steph Curry had 30 points, 9 rebounds, and 8 assists. 2 turnovers. He was a plus 26 on the night. The Warriors have won 4 of 5. Steph, after the Golden State got blown out in the first 2 games against Brooklyn and then Milwaukee, 2 of the better teams theoretically in the East. So the Warriors are now 4-3. Steph has gone for 36, 31, 26, 62, and 30 after those first 2 games where he went for 20 and 19. I only bring this up. Sometimes we got to pump the brake on the slander. Like people were ready after 2 games to decide that it's not just the Warriors could be really bad this year. And I got to admit, I was like, I'm not sure how this is going to work. And they still might be pretty ordinary.
I'm not ready to say that they've moved past ordinary.
If everybody plays and like if Draymond's healthy and all, but like this kid, they're going to struggle to be a good team in the conference.
They have not beaten a team that is currently above 500.
Right.
The best team they've beaten is Portland. And Steph had to score 62 points for them to beat Portland. Like, to put this in perspective, and we'll get into this tomorrow with Victoria Jacobs. She's going to be joining Jacoby, excuse me. So I was thinking of Jacobs from a different.
Earlier today, I referred to Taylor Jenkins as Taylor Jacobs.
Right.
Then who was a football player.
Right.
And so now it's in the heads. It's my fault.
It's in my head. Victoria Jacoby. She's going to be on with us tomorrow. You guys know her on Twitter at Count on Vic. She's awesome. You guys loved her the last time she was with us. But to put this in perspective, had Steph scored 45, which is a great night, the Warriors lose.
By a lot. But I will say this. This doesn't mean the Warriors are good. I agree with you. They're a fringy playoff team in the West. If everyone stays healthy, maybe they make it into the play-in tournament or whatever. Maybe they're in the top 10 or whatever it might be. Whatever. Steph Curry is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. And Steph didn't get shitty like overnight. Like Steph's championships were not a fraud. They're like all of this, like, and I'm not saying everyone said this, whatever. And, this is not, it's not, but it's not quite washed king stuff either. Where like maybe one person, like there were people ready to stick a fork in Steph and try to deconstruct like kind of some of the stuff that he had done over the course of his career. I think he heard and got a little mad. We talked about it with Dame Lillard, like how every year he didn't make the All-Star team, he would just come out and just flame the NBA over the last 2 months of the season. I think they made Steph mad.
There's no question. They hear everything.
All right. So tomorrow night, Victoria Jacoby will come back on Wednesday, do some wrestling with Bill Hanstock. Back to basketball on Thursday with Young Masuk, and Friday, get you ready for the playoffs. A great, great week on the Late Night Happy Hour. Thanks so much to everyone for sticking around tonight, and we will see you tomorrow.
Dank u, Nederland.